Kindergarten Daf, Mesechta Bava Metzia Daf Peiches. Begin on the bottom line of Peizayin Mebeis, where the Gemara continues with a discussion that will relate back to the halacha that we were discussing regarding, partly regarding this halacha of mekach, of when you buy something, that it creates as if it's a kvias, and also regarding this drasha that we made of kanafshacha, that we compare the worker to the employer. That the Gemara is going to bring that into the following Gemara's discussion. That entire world. Some discussed in today's daf are, when is tevel, untaif produce, mischai b'maisa, becomes obligated in separating maisas? Is it when you smooth it out the pile, into one big pile, you take all the grain and you pile it up? Is it when it sees the entryway of a house? Is it even in the chatzar that it's kavaz? What's halacha by lekech, by someone who buys it? Gurn l'maisers, when is something considered as a pile that it's a chayv maisers? It could depend on what the item is. Halacha source of that a person he eats from what he's working with when it's attached. And regarding the halacha that an animal eats from something that's detached, and how do you know both of them regarding both of them? So the Gemara begins on the bottom line of Peizayin Mebeis. Amar Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai says we have a machlekes here regarding what point crops become obligated in Meiser. Rabbi Yanai says, untyped produce does not become obligated in Meiser, even if you had smoothed out the pile in the fields, which is generally the status of when an item should be chayv in Meiser, as continued until it enters through the doorway of the face of the house, meaning not if you bring it in through the roof or through the backyard, has to come in the front door. Says the pasuk in the bottom. The person who is getting rid of the mice said, I got rid of the holy things from the house, meaning obviously it's in the house, because the chi of a meiser is only when it enters into the house. But Rabbi Yochanan, he says that no, afila chatzakavas, even the courtyard would establish the halachic obligation of meiser. Because remember the pasuk before that says, they're going to eat in your gates, and they can be satiated. And it says, which is the moment it goes into your shar, into your gate, even if it's not in your house, it's going to be obligated ma'isa. Okay, so Rabbi Yochanan Nami says, what does he do with the pasuk that says, I got rid of the hektish from my house? Sounds like it has to be in the house. Amalachi says, no, it's coming to teach you the chatzah dumi the bais. It just teaches you the courtyard has to be similar to a house, which is ma bais and just like a house is protected. Of chatzah so to a courtyard, only if it's protected, then it has this halacha. Okay. Rabbi Yanai Namik said b'sherecha. What does he do b'sherecha? He holds it has to be in the house. What's this gate of your courtyard? Well, that's actually teaching you something else. The ma'ayla derech shar. It's saying that even the house would not establish it to be chayv and ma'isa only when you enter through the gateway where you enter in. It's going to exclude if you came through the roof or you come through the back door, then you're not going to be chayiv in meiser. Okay, that's the machlekes. Where does it come into our sugya from the previous daf? Masrav Chanina Chayzah. He asked on both of them from the teaching that we said from the brisa on the previous daf, which is, it says in the pasuk when it talks about the worker, it says kanafshecha, that you could eat as your heart desires. But what's kanafshecha? Kach nafshe shel poil. So too is the desire of the worker, which is ma nafshecha, just like yourself. You could eat from it, and you're potter from separating meiser, because it wasn't yet finished the process. Av nafshe shel poil, so too the worker, he could eat, and he's potter from meiser. Now the diuk, and this is how Rashi learns it, and the words of the Gemara are saying this. Halikeh chayev. Sounds like, but if it wasn't the worker, if someone bought it at this point, because buying, as we said in the previous daf, is like Gemar Malach, it's a achshave, it creates a chashivas. It sounds like at this point, if someone bought it, he would be chayiv. You're saying a worker, not. Okay, but if someone bought it, would be chayiv. Aren't we talking about in the field itself, which is where the worker is eating from it? And as Rashi explains, buying is not any better than Gemar Malacha. So it sounds like if you finish the process, even though you're in the fields, that you would be chayiv ma'isa. So this is difficult on both opinions. They say, no, finishing is not enough. You got to bring it into the house, or you at least got to bring it into the courtyard. Don't you see over here that's enough in the fields? And my puppy says, no. An interesting case. Ha'emedes begina, a fig tree that's standing in the garden, so it's like the fields. But the branch is leaning over into the courtyard. And according to the one who holds that it has to get to the house, it's actually sticking in labayis into the house. So here, the second that you detach it, it already saw the pnei hachatzer, which Tais discusses like a few different. First of all, he says it's lav dafka te'ena because te'ena is only rabbinic meiser, and here we're talking about a biblical halacha of a worker. So it's just because it was common was a fig tree, so it's mentioning a fig tree. Additionally, Tais says, why didn't you just say that the guy picked it in the garden and he went to eat it in the house? No, because a worker is actually only allowed to eat when he's working, and he wouldn't be able to take it into the house. And so therefore, that's why it's going to be chayv ma'aser, because it's actually in the house. The branch is sticking into the house. Has to go through the front door. Right. So Tais is this. Right. So this is. Right, so Tais discusses that, right? Trying to locate where that is again. Right, trying to remember where this is. This is somewhere over here. We'll locate it soon. But akaponim, it's like it's in the house. So the Gemara first asked, so that's the case, balabais nam nechayev. So wait a second, why are you saying that this would only be a guy buying? The guy himself, when the second he detaches it, it's Gemar Malacha, and it's right in the Abayis. So why would this be a halacha only by the guy who's buying? So the Gemara has very interesting also. Abayis ain't a b'tei nasai. Oh, seriously? And as that's oh wow. Okay. So the Gemara answers that Balabayis ain't a b'tei nasai. The homeowner, his eyes are on the fig tree. The way Rashi explains it is that the branch is not significant by him. Therefore, you go after the trunk. But the primary is on the outside. So therefore, up until you finish all the harvesting and you gather into the house, that's not Gemar Malacha, even for that one. But the lekeach in the b'mekcha, the guy who's buying, he's looking at his purchase, which are the detached fruits. The moment it gets attached, it's already in the house. So therefore, it would apply by a lekech, but it wouldn't apply by the balabais. So al kaponim, that's why it's not difficult on both of them, because it is in the chatzar or it is in the bais. Which Tais discusses is he says no, we wouldn't have a tree in the house. That's why we say this type of case, and that's why we say something in the chatzar also. But really, could have just said that the tree is in the chatzar. Why do you have to say that a tree is outside and it's leaning inside? Al kaponim says the Gemara b'likeach, someone who buys, is he really biblically obligated that you need to have a pasuk to say, oh, but a worker is not like a lekeach, and meaning this whole premise that we were saying up until now, that a worker, when the guy buys something, it's like Gemar Malacha, and therefore it'd be chayiv, and therefore the pasuk has to say that a worker does not have that stringency, and he could eat a kanavshacha like the balabais, and he could eat without separating meiser. Is that really true by lekeach? But by the time we learn the brayse that says, why was it that the shops of Beis Hinoi were destroyed, which is the name of a place, 3 years before Yerushalayim? Because they stood on the biblical law. In other words, what was rabbinically forbidden, they found a heter from the Torah. Because they said, as you continue to Beis, Shteitin Pasuk, Aser Ta'aser, you should surely tithe. So it has a whole pasuk over there. The next pasuk says, but these are two pasukim near each other. It says v'chalta, and that you're going to eat. When it says you're going to eat, means v'loy meicher, but not if you sell it. If you're not eating it, you're selling it, then you don't have to separate meiser. When it says tvuah zarecha, the grain of your seed, which teaches if it was your seed, but loy lekech, but not if you buy it. If you buy it, then you don't have to separate meiser. So you see from biblical halacha, this is what they were saying, that these things are exempt. But Al Kapanim says the Gemara that clearly that Ela Midrabanan must be that you're right. The obligation for a buyer to separate meiser, and that's why they were getting punished because it's only rabbinic halacha, is midrabanan. But cross machtmalma must be that the pasuk is only an allusion, and so then the question is, so then if you're telling me that lekech is also pater midaraisa, at least it's only lekech is chayv meiser midrabanan. Why do you need a pasuk of kanavshecha to tell you that just like the balabais is ka'eichel pater? So there's a worker. I mean, a worker is not any less than the guy who buys. Meaning, even the guy who buys is actually not biblically obligated; it's only rabbinically obligated. So I don't need a pasuk to say, "Oh, he's not like a lekech and he's going to be pater." I mean, lekech is biblically pater, and we're talking about biblical halacha over here. Says the Gemara. So what does actually kanavshecha teach you? Right, it teaches something else. Like learn the brisa. Kanavshecha, like your desire is manavshecha, just like if you want to imchasam the pater, if you muzzle yourself, the balabais, the employer, you're exempt because you can muzzle yourself. You don't have to eat as you're working. Apoyel imchasam, so the worker, if you muzzle him, meaning that you make up with him a price that he shouldn't eat, or you force him, pater, give me pater from the lava, sachsam. Although it says when you talk about your ox, when he's threshing, there's a prohibition in the Torah of not muzzling him. We say that no, you don't learn that from the animal, from a kavochem that we're going to say later on, and that's the chiddush of kanavshecha to say that if you muzzle your worker just like you muzzle yourself, you're going to be pater. Now, Masa Mazuch, however, the Gemara continues asking on both Rabbi Yana and Rabbi Yechanan of when do you have the chiyuv ma'aser, but when it comes into the chutzner or into the house, from Mishnah Masechtas Maasers. Mishnah says, "Ezeu garnon." What is the gairin, which is the final process of the produce, the maasers, that it should be called a gairin, and that's considered the gemara malacha, that now you can't snack from it anymore, and that's chayv ma'aser. So bikishum, regarding squash, or bidlum, regarding pumpkins, it's mishi paksu. So Rabasi says, what's mishi paksu? It's mishi notl pika shalhen. Is when the picus, which is this blossom that grows on the top and is attached, and at a later point in time it falls off and gets detached. When that blossom, when that that thing that you have around the top falls off, that's when it's chayav ma'aser. My love, says the Gemara, isn't it mishi paksu fil basada? Even if it falls off in the field, that's chayav ma'aser. That would be not like Rabbi Yana and Rabbi Yechanan. So the Gemara, no mishi paksu b'bayis. We're talking about when it falls off in the house or in the chutzner. Says if that's the case, mishi paksu, it shouldn't say from when it falls off. Anshi paksu miboyle. It should say up until. Meaning, since you come in to tell me that even the bayis would not establish it until also the blossom falls off, so the Mishnah should have said anshi paksu. When you say the word mishi paksu, it sounds like that from, meaning that already from then, no matter where it is, it's gonna be chayiv. Says he no, itan achi paksu. Had I said until it falls off, have I mean I would have thought that it's a stringency ad digamar lepikusai until all of it falls off. Mashma mishi paksu mechiyaskol lepikusai, for when it starts falling off is already going to be considered chayiv ma'aser. Additionally, the Gemara continues to ask, Masam Azuch Bredum Nachman. He asks that it says, Gornoi Lamaiser, the Gorin for Maiser L'chayiv L'mashum Tavel to be chayiv, that something is considered untithed produce, that you didn't separate Maiser, it's Mishatigma Malachtan, is when you finish the work. What's the finishing of the work? Is Meleches Hachnasasan, the activity of bringing it in. My love, isn't it achnasasna when you bring it in, even in the field? Meaning, what does it mean achnasasai? It means piling it up into a pile for the purposes of bringing it in, and you see that it's already in the field. So it means when you bring it into the house, that's a lashon of knisa, of entering. Zeu gemar malachta, and that would be the finishing of the work. Now, if you want to answer going all the way back to the beginning, if you want, you could say that it's not difficult on them at all because kikam Rabbi when the Rabbi say that the house is the kaviyas, and we were asking from all these sources that my love afilaba basada, my love afilaba basada. So we answered them all. We said no, it's babayis bachatz. Says no. If you want, you could say that it's not difficult in Rabbi because when Rabbi says his halacha has to go into the house, is specifically bezeisim ba'anavim, is talking about by olives and grapes that they're ready to eat, and they're also included in the category of tavua, and their mice is biblical. Now, since the labnei garin, they're not things that you thresh. So when you bring it into the house, it's already ready. It's already kviyas because they don't have any other kviyas. So it's only going to be when you bring it in the house because when it is established that you finished it. But regarding wheat and barley, the pasuk explicitly mentions the idea about a gorin. So yeah, those things would be chayv and meiser even in the fields once you make a pile out of it. I says Rashi. The Gemara says in general, like we find the Gemara Pesachim Naf Tesam and Aleph by Talmid Chacham that dies and he leaves over a megula full of peiros. So we say that maybe it never became tevel like Rabbi Ishia because maybe he was crafty and he brought in his grain through the roof, or whatever this and that. Obviously, would not hold to the teretz we're saying over here because they hold that even chit and sa'ir, Biyani said is halacha that's only chayav once it comes into the house. Here we're saying Rashi just pointed out that that chit and sa'ir would be chayav and meiser even if it doesn't go into the house because there's halacha of gairin once you make it in the pile, even out in the fields. Okay, says the Gemara. Now that we finished this parenthetical discussion because we just wanted to bring in the teaching of kanafshecha, which actually ended up amending what the teaching of kanafshecha even really was. But once we did that, we brought in the teachings of when you have a mice. So now we go back to the primary halacha we mentioned of our previous daf regarding the Mishnah of these could eat min hatayra, which is when the animal and the human are working with the vegetation. So it says, we already brought a source for a person for food that's attached to the ground. That was al kelich alisitain. That when you're harvesting, that's when you could eat. You just can't put it into your pockets. B'shar b'talish and ox on something that's detached. That we have a mefurish pasuk in the Torah. Leisachim shar b'disha. You're not allowed to muzzle ox when he's threshing, which is detached. So that we know the sources for that. The question the Gemara wants to know, however, is odin b'talish menolan. A man for things that are detached, which was the second halacha we said in the Mishnah. How do you know that he's allowed to eat? It says the Gemara kabochem mishar. It's kabochem from shar, which is if an which, as Rashi explains, we're actually going to say that a shar could eat when it's attached. It just means you don't find explicitly in the Torah an ox. We don't find that he could eat from something that's attached to the ground. Yet should get when it's detached. So a person that eats from attached in the din isn't it a kavachim that he can eat when it's attached? Says no, you can't learn that from shar. Malasha, what do you find? It has a unique halacha that there's a command in the Torah that you're not allowed to muzzle him. What are you going to say by a person that there's no command that you're not allowed to muzzle him? So maybe he's limited, he's less than the shire, and he cannot eat when it's detached. Says he, what's haste? Let make that part of the kavachem also. What do you mean? A person should be commanded you're not allowed to muzzle him. Kavachem from shire. You have no mitzvah to keep him alive. Still you're commanded you're not allowed to muzzle him. So a person that is a command in the Torah, which is this week's parasha, that is a command that your brother lives with you, that you have a command to keep him alive. In the Din isn't it a kavachaymer that you commanded you're not allowed to muzzle him? No, the pasuk says kanafshecha, and that's what was the amended teaching. We said what kanafshecha comes to teach you, which is kanafshe shel poyel, just is the same way is the worker's the soul. Man nafshe, just like a person himself. If you muzzle yourself when you're working, you're exempt. So to the worker, if you muzzle him, you're going to be potter. So obviously, that's not part of the kabuchaymer. So we're back to the question: how do you know a person eating from detached produce could eat if you cannot learn that from shur? Because shur has a chumrah that you're not allowed to muzzle him, in contrast to a person. So what's the source? So Amakro, because the pasuk says kama beis pa'amim, says kisave b'kamas re'echa, and it says al kamas re'echa. So if it's not teaching me anything regarding a person for attached, because I already know the source, it's going to teach me regarding a person eating when it's detached. That's one source. He says actually a different interpretation. He says that adam b'talish le'tarchra, a person regarding that's detached doesn't need a pasuk. Why? It says in the pasuk, you're going to come into the vineyard of your friend. When it says you come into the vineyard of a friend, aren't we talking about shasachar lekatif? Aren't we talking about we hired him to schlep packages on his shoulders to carry the grapes, and his friends are the ones that are harvesting. So he's working it when it's detached. And still, the Torah says that you could eat it. So you see talish in the pasuk. Okay, so the Gemara, how do you know an ox regarding when it's attached? We only have in the pasuk of bedisha when he's threshing, which is attached already. Says from a person. In other words, as Rashi explains, that we don't find explicitly, we just said that he is included in talish, but we don't find mafurish that he when it's detached. Still he could when it's attached. An ox that when it's detached. In the din shaykhim mechuba isn't there a couple when it's attached? It's like no. Mal adam. What are you going to learn from adam has a certain stringency. Shekin not the mitzvah lachayesi. You have a mitzvah to keep him alive. Time you're sure she had the mitzvah lachayesi. What are you going to say about an ox that you have no mitzvah to keep him alive? Says what do you mean? You should mitzvah lachayesi mekabel chayim. What do you actually learn kabel chayim? That you have a command for PETA for you to keep your animals alive from human beings. If a person is not commanded about muzzling him, you're allowed to muzzle him. At the mitzvah lachayesi, you have to keep him alive. So regarding an ox, you have a command. You're not a Muslim. Isn't a kabel you have a command to keep your animal alive. So that's the Gemara in the Omakra. The pasuk in this week's parasha says that you have to keep your brother alive with you. Your brother, and not an ox. So we're back to the question. How do you know an ox by attach? You can't learn that from Adam. Adam has a chumrah of a chayachicha, which you don't have by an animal. So Omakra said the pasuk it says in the pasuk 2 times the word re'echa. It says b'kamas re'echa. It says al kamas re'echa. So if that pasuk, which is talking about the person, is not teaching you regarding anything of a person for attached, because from one of them you already learned out. So the other one is Tanei in l'shar b'mechuber, teaching regarding an ox for when it's attached. Another source says the Gemara. Ravina says no, actually loy adam betalish v'loy shar b'mechuber. I don't need to have a pasuk as we were trying to find the source for a person when it's detached and an ox when it's attached. Both of them are not tzrichikra. They don't need psukim. Why? Because it says in the pasuk leisachsam shabedishay. You're not allowed to muzzle an ox in its threshing. As it continues to have petesim and aleph. Mechti, let's see. Kol mili isnu b'chasima. All types of creatures are included in the prohibition of muzzling. In other words, obviously it's not really just an ox. And all animals are included in the prohibition about muzzling. How do I know that? Because the Alfina is Shur Mishabas. We learn out in Baba Kamen of Nandalman Beis in Pek Shur Nagach that by Shabbos it says V'chol B'emtecha. And even though it says Shur, it means all animals. So over here, even though it says Shur, obviously Shur is Lavdavka. So if that's the case, then why does the Torah even write in the first place? Lichter Brachman Leitidish Bechasima. Just write, don't thresh when there's muzzling. Shur the Kazar Lamali. Why does it say Shur? It's like Kushe Chaisim Lenechsim and Nechsim Lechaisim. It's going to compare the muzzler to the muzzled and the muzzled to the muzzler. Meaning, the Adam to the Shur and Shur to the Adam regarding the eating of the workers. To teach you. Just like the human being could eat when it's attached, so too the muzzled animal could also eat when it's attached. Just like the muzzled animal can eat when it's attached, so too the muzzler can eat when it is attached. Thank you to any time for hosting us.